Download and upload more than ever before with an ultra-fast fiber connection. With 3 simple steps, you can be the one with an SLT fiber optic connection. Visit slt.lk.
Tonight, Resolution 30-1. Global Sri Lanka Forum criticized the move by Foreign Ministry to seek more time on the UNHRC resolution on Sri Lanka, while the President plans to do away with it.
Now we have challenged the credibility and authority of the President. I do not think that's a good way to do business.
Stop and frisk. Supreme Court ordered the CID not to arrest former Navy Commander retired Admiral Wasantha Karannagoda over the case of abduction of 11 youths. Developing Hambantota, the Cabinet of Ministers approved the construction of a new export-oriented petroleum refinery in Hambantota. And budget woes. Both the United National Front and the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna stresses that no plans to defeat the expenditure on President. Tonight, Thursday, the 7th of March 2019.
From Ada Derana, this is Ada Derana First at 9 with Ndivari Amuwata and Mahesh Jani. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a very good evening and welcome to First at 9 right here on Ada Derana 24. Good evening, Indivari.
Good evening, Mahesh.
Lots of stories to report, very especially with regard to the budget. Seems like it's still on the fence.
Right, but it also seems that there is a lot of emphasis on the President's expenditure head. There's a lot of debate with the government and the opposition talking about this single component. Exactly. But I guess we'll have a lot to talk about that. We will follow up on this with a discussion from the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. But focusing apart from the budget, we also have some stories to report on the UNHRC, how Sri Lanka is going to focus on the UNHRC resolution that will be tabled, and there are losses at the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation that we are talking about from 2018. Indeed,
but tonight our lead story is the UNHRC update from the UNHRC. President Maithripala Sirisena and the Minister of Foreign Affairs expressed diverging views over Sri Lanka's approach to the ongoing United Nations Human Rights Council session in Geneva.
Well, the President is of the view that Sri Lanka should be allowed to handle its own issues without any pressure from the international community, while the Foreign Ministry announced that it will seek an extension the timeline of Resolution 30/1 through a co-sponsored rollover resolution during the ongoing 40th regular session.
Well, convening a media briefing today, the Global Sri Lanka Forum expressed views over the conflict of interest between the two factions.
At a time when the President himself has said that we should be concentrating on healing our wounds, we are now again done something that will reopen the wounds. There's no doubt that in the country there's widespread resentment about this resolution and the contents of that resolution. The fact that it has already resulted in a number of military personnel being detained, sometimes only on the basis of allegations rather than on the basis of proved facts. And I'm sure within the country itself, people are now scratching their heads as to why this was done, particularly since the President had publicly taken a stance which was definitely not consistent with co-sponsoring the resolution. Now we have challenged the credibility of the President, challenged his authority, and in a country like Sri Lanka or any other country, I do not think that's a good way to do business. Resolutions of the Human Rights Council have no legal effect. They cannot be enforced. The fact that they cannot be enforced becomes debatable or academic because we ourselves co-sponsored this resolution. This at least creates a moral obligation on us to give effect to these provisions of the resolution. And of course, The moral obligation is not limited to the current authorities. The obligation will continue into the future. The resolution will be used as a stick to beat us up with forever.
In 2015 September, when Sri Lanka's foreign ministry agreed to co-sponsor a resolution brought forward by America, we saw it as treason. Now they are going to do the same thing again and join hands with those who are talking ill of this country. Here we are in a situation, there's a huge dispute between the way the president thinks and the prime minister thinks. We as patriotic Sri Lankans fully support president's position. We should never have accepted this resolution in the first place, and we should never support any further extension of this resolution. The government should outright this new resolution that will be introduced by UK, but unfortunately the current government led by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe will not act the way the people of this country wants. It is very likely that they will go ahead and co-sponsor this, but the people of this country should know that these people are betraying this country and rally around this injustice.
Meanwhile, the Tamil National Alliance today revealed their stance on the matter pertaining to the UNHRC resolution. Addressing Parliament, TNA parliamentarian M.S. Sumanthiran said adopting a new resolution at the United Nations Human Rights Council is a necessity for the country and it is advisable to co-sponsor it. The parliamentarian also called on the international community to support and expedite implementation of reforms which Sri Lanka is liable to through the UNHRC resolutions.
Yesterday, from His Excellency the President at a meeting with newspaper editors stating that he will be sending 3 of his own representatives to Geneva and that he will be seeking the UN body to let Sri Lanka handle its own affairs. Sri Lanka has been allowed to handle its own affairs. When that was not done, an international investigation was mandated. Subsequently, it was with Sri Lanka's consent to promote accountability and reconciliation that 30/1 and subsequently 34/1 was passed. We are very disappointed with the pace of these reforms that Sri Lanka has agreed to take. Even to establish an Office of Missing Persons, it took so long. We need the assistance that the international community can give us to continue with this difficult task. Our position has been that a new resolution must be adopted at the UN Human Rights Council and Sri Lanka must, as of necessity, agree with that and co-sponsor that resolution yet again. I'll be grateful if the Honourable Prime Minister can respond, because we have had the assurance, not just us, but you have given the world the assurance that you will cooperate.
U.S. Ambassador to Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Elena Teplitz, says that the United States government remains committed to supporting the Sri Lankan government in meeting the commitments made in Geneva. She made this comment in a backdrop where the United States withdrew from the United Nations Human Rights Council, accusing the body of being a cesspool of political bias. Now, responding to journalists in Jaffna, she went on to express support towards the Office of Missing Persons in Sri Lanka.
So the United States government remains very committed to supporting the people of Sri Lanka and the Sri Lankan government in meeting the commitments that had been made in Geneva.
She went on to say that the United States would do its best to encourage the government to deliver answers to people who seek them.
We're very supportive of the Office of Missing Persons and of families getting answers and resolving some of the issues that have come from the many years of conflict that have taken place in this country. We look forward to continuing that support. I have opportunities to talk with families of the disappeared, to hear from them personally, and we will do our best to encourage and support the government to deliver the answers that are so deserved.
Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa says the country is facing the repercussions of not reaffirming Sri Lanka's fidelity in Geneva by stating the true facts. The opposition leader expressed these views at a religious event held in Homagama today. Meanwhile, the High Commissioner of Pakistan, Major General Dr. Shahid Ahmad Hasmat, met with the opposition leader today in order to discuss matters pertaining to regional security.
Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa attended a religious function held at the Khande Purana Viharaya in Homagama this afternoon.
Today, the diaspora believes that arrested terrorists should be released and that those who defeated them, our war heroes, should be given even more serious punishments. The situation is being discussed in Geneva today. During the past 4 years, no one clarified the fidelity of this country. Therefore, we are undergoing its repercussions. It is our responsibility to preserve the ruins and temples in the north. I feel like speaking only on the topic of politics at a time when the budget is being tabled. I find it difficult not to speak about it, but I hope in due course you too will be of the same view.
In the meantime, earlier in the day, High Commissioner of Pakistan, Major General Dr. Shahid Ahmed Hashmat, paid a courtesy call on opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa. The High Commissioner briefed him on the latest security situation in the region and underscored Pakistan's desire for peace, stability and resolution of all issues through negotiation and dialogue. Highlighting various steps taken by Pakistan to de-escalate the situation, the High Commissioner underlined Pakistan's resolve to protect its territory against any external aggression.
Well, the budget for the remainder of the year was the main topic of discussion during the parliamentary session today as well, where MPs from both the government and opposition had much to say.
The current debate will be held until the 14th of this month. We have to pay $5.9 billion of debt within this year. This is a difficult economic situation because the previous government borrowed money for the Port City Development Project, Hambantota Port Development Project and Mattala International Airport. None of these development projects brings an income into the country. We have allocated millions of rupees for the construction of the Kandy Expressway. It took 10 years for the construction of the Southern Expressway. We will conclude the construction of highway between Potuhara to Kurunegala by August this year. Opposition leader Mahinda Rajapaksa constructed the Southern Expressway to the doorstep of his house in Beliyatha, who wanted an expressway to Beliyatha. He didn't even think about constructing one to Kandy. When the government has borrowed 2 trillion rupees from the banking system of the country, how can people take loans from banks to build a house, buy a vehicle and start a business? I'm warning all of you that the banking system won't be able to lend any money to the public by the end of this year. Our finance minister has proposed a new concessionary loan scheme for the youth called Home Sweet Home, to which parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa and his brother can apply once they get it. Even we like this idea that a young man can get married and build a home for his new family. But as per this new loan scheme, they will have to pay a loan installment of 64,000 rupees every month. How can we hope for a better future for the youth in this country when you increase taxes and don't create new job opportunities? On top of that, the interest rate is 6.5%. And then you promise to build a new university called Mahapala University during your previous budget. You then looted all that money from the bond scam. During former President Mahinda Rajapaksa's government of 9 years, we had borrowed only 5 trillion rupees. But the Good Governance government has borrowed the same amount during its tenure of only 4 years. What development have you achieved by borrowing all this money?
Minister of Finance Mangala Samaravira says that Gamperaliya received the highest budget allocation among rural development programs in the country's history. Speaking at a budget seminar held in Colombo today, the minister went on to say that despite criticism, the government has provided adequate allocation for the development of agriculture in Sri Lanka.
The myriad of views from diverse groups on the budget, the intention of which was to shift from a culture of handouts to a culture of empowerment. Our major entrepreneurship initiative, the Enterprise Sri Lanka program, getting affordable capital into the hands of small business with over 60 billion within a short span of time, that dispersed with capital flowing into new and emerging entrepreneurs. Gamperaliya will also be expanded and driven forward with added vigor to 2019, and this is a major component of this year's budget with an allocation the highest ever for any rural industrial program. I have also spoken previously on the focus of the budget and overall policy in driving exports and FDI. However, we have not forgotten the agriculture-driven economy. We have allocated 87 billion through the appropriation bill for agriculture, fisheries and livestock development. This includes over 1.7 billion for the agriculture modernization program. 250 million has been allocated in the budget proposals to support small farmers to obtain the technology and expertise to shift to higher value crops while linked. The government has also allocated 400 million to support measures to increase Sri Lanka's forest cover. We are also investing in the hard infrastructure to address environmental issues, including 1 billion for solid waste disposal facilities. We will also gradually bring the informal tourism sector into the formal sector by ensuring registration with the SLTDA by April 2020 for tourist establishments using booking engines. And also, we hope to liberalize and make the issuance of liquor licenses to such establishments that much easier. In this year's budget, we also continue to maintain fiscal discipline whilst we have created space for efficient public expenditure in the appropriate sectors that warrant intervention. Overall, I believe this year's budget creates the appropriate balance between supporting growth, furthering competitiveness, and developing a robust safety net, all within a framework of fiscal discipline.
Meanwhile, parliamentarian Dinesh Gunawardena said that Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna has decided not to defeat the president's expenditure head. Addressing a media briefing in Colombo today, Gunawardena went on to say that it is the opposition that holds the majority in the parliament and not the United National Party. He therefore insisted that the opposition will not defeat the president's expenditure head. Now, State Minister of Internal and Home Affairs and Provincial Councils and Local Government, J.C. Alavathuwala, says that no decision has been taken to defeat the president's expenditure head as well. Now, addressing the media at the UNP headquarters today, the State Minister stressed that they will vote according to the decision taken by the UNF during the budget debate. We received the support of 122 parliamentarians following the unconstitutional and illegal incident which took place in Parliament on the 26th of October. We have this majority to get the budget passed, even if the JVP leaves us. We held a party meeting today and no such decision was taken. I think some have expressed their personal views. The President's expenditure head comes with the expenditure heads of the Prime Minister, Speaker as well as the Parliament. Therefore, it cannot be defeated. The Prime Minister's expenditure head is included. The government has to function void of personal agendas. We will vote according to the decision taken by the UNF.
Well, to discuss more on Budget 2019, the opposition to it and the allocations, we've invited to our studios as promised, parliamentarian UPFA, Kanchana Vijayasekara. Good evening and a warm welcome to First at 9.
Good evening.
Welcome back, in fact. I think, Kanchana, now this government's budget has been welcomed by certain quarters, while the opposition too has certain views on this. Finance Minister Mangala Samaravira continues to say that this is not an election budget, although we're expecting elections around the corner at the end of the year and going forward. What is your view in this regard? Because the opposition, today in Parliament, we saw the opposition counter these comments, and also the government has shown that they have been able to tap into all sectors of the country's required areas through this budget, which means they've actually been able to win the hearts of many.
I think any government that brings in a budget tries to bring in an attractive budget to the people. So this budget is no different. And we have seen in the 2018 budget as well, there were attractive proposals. But if you look at the progress that was done in the last year, the same finance minister made the proposals for the economic development of this country and so many other infrastructure development proposals. But if you look at all the indicators, economic indicators, and also different rankings the country has gained, what we have seen is from 2000 17, we have actually gone back. But if you compare it to 2014, all the indicators, especially the economic growth, we have decreased from about 7.4% to about 3.2%, and 3.2% is the lowest in Southeast Asia, and as well as most Asian countries have gone over 4%. And also, if you look at all these credit rating agencies, Fitch Ratings, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, all these agencies have downgraded Sri Lanka.
Sorry to interrupt, but these downgrades came during the October period. This is following the political crisis.
But it came through the political crisis during that period. But credit ratings are not down in a certain 1 week or 2 week period. It's done taking into account how the country has performed, how the economy has performed over a year's time. So the credit ratings were anyway due, even regardless of the constitution crisis or the government changes, whatever thing. The credit rating agencies were to downgrade Sri Lanka in any manner.
But what the United National Front government, what they continue to say, even if you just had a look about that previous UNF press briefing, what they continue to say is this is because of the borrowings of the previous regime, the 9 years of borrowings, and this is exactly why we had to pay all this debt, and that's why we are in this state. What do you have to say to that?
That is the campaign slogan that they used in 2015 for the January elections. But if you really look at the debt situation in this country, when President Rajapaksa took over as president in 2005, the entire debt borrowings the country had was at 2 trillion. From 2 trillion to 7.3 trillion was the amount that was borrowed by President Rajapaksa in a 9-year period. So he borrowed about 5.1 trillion during the 9 years that he was in power. But the debt situation right now, we have gone from 7 trillion to 12 trillion, and we are almost at twice the amount that we had in 2015 January. So if you look at the situation, 9 years, the 9-year period that President Rajapaksa governed, the entire borrowings that were done was 5 trillion, but this government has borrowed 5 trillion in 4-year period, as well as increasing the tax revenue as well.
So, Kanchana, if we talk about, if you all are saying that this is not the way to govern the country, and if this is not the economic policy that the government should implement, what is exactly the alternative? What is your solution?
No, we are not saying that the country should not borrow, but you have to show something for what you have borrowed. So this government doesn't have anything to show for what they have borrowed. The President Rajapaksa's government had things to show. We had a port that was built in Hambantota. We had an airport that was built in Mattala. There was highways that was developed to the south and to the airport as well. And there were all these infrastructure development that was taking place. The Port City Development Project, the Nonochole electrical plant, all these things took place in that 5 trillion that was borrowed by the Rajapaksa government. But this government, with the borrowing that they have done in the 5 trillion, there's nothing to show for. And they have already sold out most of the development work that has been taking place in the 9-year period.
Coming back again to that same question, what even in Parliament today, what the leader of the House, Lakshman Kiriyala, said was that these all these projects that you guys have done in the past is the reason that the country is right now in this dire economic situation, because none of them are generating the funds that are expected, the Hambantota Port, the Mattala International Airport. So what exactly is
and I think to add to that, there's also comments from the government that during the October to December, the political situation in that period has actually burdened the country and put the country into a further mess financially.
Now this 51-day period that President Rajapaksa became Prime Minister is what they are using to cover up the entire 4.5-year mess that they have put the country through. So you can't compare 51 days. I think you have to go and compare 2014, where we were 2014, and where we are right now, rather than comparing what happened in the 51 days. And also about the projects that Honorable Lakshman Kiriyala criticized about. Now, what they said was to pay off the loans in the Hambantota port, that they had to go into agreement with the Chinese government. So the debt is being paid in full by the Chinese government or the Chinese company that had taken over the Hambantota port. So if that is the case, then our borrowings or our debt situation should be less. But what we see right now is an increase in the debt situation. And the highways have generated more money than expected, and that has, I think, been one of the biggest projects that has benefited this government in the last 3-4 years. And also the Norwich plant, which was criticized heavily by the government back then in the opposition. If not for the Norwich plant, I think our diesel bills would have increased much more for generation of power, and we wouldn't have been able to generate all this power. And also, I would like to point out that some of the major proposals that were presented in this budget, it looks attractive. That's why I say it is a budget that is focused on going for elections, because they say that it's covered all the sectors.
But just to add to that also, I think we're talking about tax revenue here, but the government also says that this high expenditure, the capital expenditure that we're looking at in the rest of 2018 will not be financed through borrowings, which means there is also an effort to not push the country into a further debt trap. What are your thoughts?
No, that's because they have increased the tax revenue from 1 trillion to 2 trillion from 2014 to 2019. So it is an increase of 100%. So they put the burden on the people. So and with that tax revenue, and also they have proposed actually to borrow 2 trillion in this year as well in the parliament. That was a proposal for. So they can't say that they're not going to borrow any money.
Right.
So and also the proposals that were read out in Parliament day before yesterday. Most of those proposals were there in the same budget debates, budget proposals in 2016, 17, 18 as well. So even the more attractive ones are actually catered towards the youth. So we can see that they're actually going in for an election next year. So this could well be the last budget proposal that this government is bringing in.
So you're hopeful that there will be an election?
No, there'll be definitely an election coming up. So there'll be a presidential election by the end of the year. And there will be a parliamentary elections by April of next year. So that's what they're gearing up for.
Right,
and also one more thing, if you look at all these indicators, even the stock market. Now the stock market at 2014 was at, the return on investment was at 25%. Now the return on investment is at -5%. So who would come to invest in a country which gives a negative investment on return? So those are the indicators that we have to go by.
So I think, Kanchana, will talk more on that at Hyde Park. But on First at 9, this is all the time we have. We have more stories.
Yes, let's move on with the other stories we have for you tonight. The Supreme Court today issued an order preventing the Criminal Investigation Department from arresting former Navy Commander retired Admiral Wasantha Karanagura over the case pertaining to the abduction of 11 youth in 2008. This was announced by the Supreme Court when the fundamental rights petition filed by Admiral Karanagura through his lawyers were taken up today. President's Counsel Ramesh Silva, representing the petitioner, informed court that the CID is making necessary preparation to arrest his client without sufficient evidence. The President's Counsel also claimed that certain non-governmental organizations were plotting his client's arrest on an incident that took place 10 years ago. Despite objections from President's Counsel J.C. Valiamuna, who represented the relatives of the disappeared youth, the magistrate ordered the CID not to arrest or detain retired Admiral Wasantha Karanagura. However, the court instructed the former Navy commander to provide a statement before the CID on the 11th of March.
And JVP Politburo member KD Lalkantha, who was arrested over an accident in Anuradhapura, was granted bail by the Anuradhapura Magistrates Court today. Lalkantha was arrested on charges of drunk driving following a traffic accident on the 1st of March and was remanded until the 14th of March by the Anuradhapura Magistrates Court. Lawyers representing the JVP Politburo member presented a motion seeking bail, for which the courts allowed to proceed with the motion. Accordingly, Additional Magistrate Hemantha Pushpakumara released the JVP Politburo member on 2 surety bails of 100,000 rupees each.
Business news is on the other side of this break. Stay with First at 9.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is Other Derana 24.
Welcome back in business news. State-run Ceylon Petroleum Corporation has lost 104 billion rupees in 2018, down from a 3.5 billion rupee profit a year earlier, with 82 billion rupees of the loss coming from the collapse of an unstable soft peg with the US dollar. Although the Finance Ministry had targeted a net profit of 2.8 billion rupees for 2018, according to the Finance Ministry data, this was the worst loss incurred by the CPC, topping the 97.3 billion rupee loss in year 2012. Now, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation sales grew 14.6% from a year earlier to 521.5 billion rupees last year, with the cost of sales increasing by 27.1% to 524 billion rupees, generating gross loss of 2.4 billion rupees, down from a gross profit of 43 billion rupees in 2017. The firm then lost 82.7 billion rupees as the Sri Lankan rupee collapsed in 2019 and 18.
The Cabinet of Ministers today granted approval to construct a new export-oriented petroleum refinery in Hambantota. This petroleum refinery is reported to have a capacity of 10 million metric tons per annum. A proposal was presented to operate joint commercial activities with Silver Park International and the Ministry of Oil and Gas of the Sultanate of Oman at this refinery. Minister of Development Strategies and International Trade Malik Samaravikrama made this proposal in order to lease out 400 acres of land, which is required to establish the proposed industrial zone, to the investor.
And we take a short break. Do stay with us on First at 9.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel. This is Other Derana 24.
Well, that's all from us here at First at 9. Do log on to www.otherderana.lk for the very latest. I'm Indira Yamuatha.
I'm Mahesh Johnny. Have a very good night.